What's up, everybody? My name's Andrew Germer. This is the first episode of Sports Card Tech's weekly show that I'm doing in a segment-based format, and I'm recording in one take. So my goal is not to have a live show because there's no way I could run these graphics and talk to the camera and chat with people live all at the same time. I suppose I could, but I don't know if it'd be as good of a show. So what I'm gonna do is try to record things where I don't have to take a break from speaking or go back into the film room, if you will, and edit things. I can just push record and bring people a show that they like if they love sports cards. Now, let's get into our very first regular segment. It is the card of the day. So on the card of the day, we're going to feature a card each day that there's an episode. Sometimes it might be something that was a huge sale in the marketplace. Sometimes it'll be a card that no one really cares about. And that's a lot like today's card. In fact, I've named it the first card of the day because it's the most important card in the entire world to me. And the reason why is it's the card that really inspired me to become a card collector. The person that I collect, the player that I collect, is Nick Van Exel, the former Laker point guard, played for many other teams later in his career as well. And when I was 8 years old, before the internet, before email, before you could tweet all the favorite players and celebrities that you like and follow, I did what was called writing him a letter on pen and paper and put it in the mail with a stamp on it and said, "You are my favorite basketball player." And he wrote me back and sent me this. An autographed card penned in gorgeous gold ink that I've since had authenticated and slabbed by PSA. I care not for them to grade it because I know it's not a 10, and I'm one of those quality snobs who likes PSA 10s only. So if it's not a 10, I don't need a number on it. And to me, this card is the definition of priceless. This is a thing that when it showed up in the mail, I didn't know at the time, of course, I was 8, but it completely changed the course of my life. It made me fall in love with sports cards and collecting at what was back then the peak of sports cards. I'm so glad to say we have since surpassed that peak as a hobby with all of the activity that's come into it in the last couple of years. But when I got started collecting back in 1993, this is the card that did it for me. And you can imagine how special it is to write a letter to your favorite player and to get an autographed card back. I know I'm not the only one to have that experience, but if you've had it, it's one of those things as a kid that stays with you forever. It's just special. And so I'm very proud that this is our very first card of the day. Got to get used to pointing the right way. And it is a 1993 Upper Deck number 163, number 162. The card is kind of funny. So I did not send Nick this card. He sent it back to me after I wrote him a letter. Sometimes as a kid, I would mail athletes I liked a card that I hoped that they would sign in return. And in my case, like a lot of the smaller, less popular, less successful athletes would return those cards. Nick was a pretty successful star from the beginning with the Lakers, despite being a second-round draft pick. But he was the leader of a team that had lost Magic Johnson recently, did not have anywhere near Kobe or Shaq yet, and was very much in a period of transition. And this is when I fell in love with basketball. The mid-90s was a great time for that to happen. And I love this guy. I love the way he played. He had swag, the way he handled the ball in advance of Iverson and many of the other players that have since changed the game in the way the ball handling works, the way that sort of street ball or showy styles of play completely changed the way that people move the ball around the court and created a more individual style of play. This is the guy that did that for me. He made basketball really fun to watch, no matter how good or bad the Lakers were. In fact, they did not make the playoffs in his rookie season, 93-94, and that was okay. I still watched every single game and enjoyed the heck out of it. So this is a PSA Pop 1 of 1. I've picked an estimated market value for it of $300, but it will never be for sale. It'll probably go with me to my grave, or certainly be left in my will if anything else. And I'm proud to introduce this as the very first card of the day. Next, we'll take a look in our next major segment at what's dropping. So welcome to the first What's Dropping segment, and this is a part of the show where we're going to take a look at releases from Topps, Panini, and Upper Deck in the world of cardboard cards. And I say cardboard because there are so many digital versions of collectibles today that specifying cardboard seemed important. When you look at this calendar, or if you watch this show right when it comes out, it'll be June 16th, you'll realize there's a couple of releases on here from in advance of that. And I was planning to record this episode before June 11th, which you can see the products here listed at the top are from June 11th. Had a family issue that prevented that, but since I already made the graphics and I like the two sets that I featured here on June 11th, I wanted to go into a little bit more depth about them. So I've kept them on the calendar, but in future shows, I'll mostly be focused on things that are coming out after the show is released at earliest. So the first release on this calendar that I want to highlight, though, is Topps Series 2 Baseball. And it's important because it's a flagship release, along with Topps Series 1, Topps Series 2, and Topps Update. Those are the three sets you want to buy if you want that classic Topps rookie card of any player that you might collect or you hope is, in a speculative sense, going to be a star someday. And one of those players that we can highlight from that set is Ke'Bryan Hayes of the Pirates. He suffered an injury early this year. I've been one of his fantasy owners, so you know that is if you own a guy in fantasy, you know way too much about when they're injured, when they were out, and when they come back, and ultimately what you think their potential is. So he's a player I'm high on, and a lot of people who love baseball or follow baseball are high on. He's got all of the raw tools to be a great hitter. He has enough skill set to stay at third base for the interim, or at least in the short term, and his flagship Topps rookie card is included in this set. I think there would be, usually I would say there's like 3 to 5 key rookies in a lot of these sets. This is the only one I'm focusing on just to pick one. We could go into a deeper dive, like mini shows do, into the entire set itself. But on this show, I want to keep things a little bit higher level and just focus on 1 or 2 cards that I think are interesting from the upcoming calendar of releases. So we'll take a look at that calendar again and notice that the second product listed there is Topps Chrome UEFA Champions League Soccer. Soccer cards have more than just exploded over the last several years. In fact, there is so much demand compared to the supply that it's now rivaling many of the major sports as well as basketball and football and baseball. The Topps UEFA Chrome Champions League set features many rookies. One of them that I like is Jude Bellingham. I like watching Dortmund play. They just have so much young talent on the field. And Bellingham, I believe, is 17 still, so a true baby. And in the sense that you might prospect as a baseball card collector with players who just got signed internationally at 16. This is the same level of prospecting that's happening in a lot of places in soccer right now, because you can tell, for the most part, you have a pretty good idea by 16, 17, 18 if this player has the potential to have world-class talent. Jude Bellingham is a player that has potential to have world-class talent. And me, I love soccer. I really love Austin FC. I'm an Austin resident. I have season tickets. Their very first game at home is this weekend, and that's my connection to soccer. But otherwise, I enjoy watching international soccer, global soccer, and just learning more about it as I watch. So rather than pretend to be the expert on all of the cool key cards that are released in this set, I'm going to feature a graphic from Sunday League Investors on Instagram. They put together a graphic of, for the most part, all of the notable players who have their first Topps Chrome release in this set. Soccer cards are funny, like other sports. There's ambiguity around the definition of what a rookie card is. If it's not that first card in a base set from a flagship release, then sometimes it can be a sticker, often released by Panini, or something that maybe came in a Sports Illustrated episode, Sports Illustrated for Kids card episode sheet. Depends on what you consider a rookie card, but if you're a purist and you really consider it to be the first base release of a key card for a player, then this is that. And the players you can see here, thanks again to Sunday League Investors on Instagram, are probably the ones you want to target if you're looking to prospect, to genuinely prospect for future soccer stars. Guys that are known today, especially if you're a big soccer fan. None of these are all huge names that are very exciting to think about. But if you're trying to get ahead of the curve by the next 3 to 5 years, these are some of the guys that you want to be looking at. So one other thing we're going to cover on what's dropping are some of the releases that are happening in the fractional investment apps. One of those fractional investment apps, in fact, the one that is most specifically focused on sports, is Collectible. If you've never heard of Collectible or Rally, which I'll cover in a moment, both of those apps are doing a great job of taking hugely expensive cards, in this case a $45,000 Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson rookie card from Bumblebee Tuna in 1994 when he played as a freshman for University of Miami football. Of course, he's much better known today for his wrestling and entertainment endeavors. Certainly one of the most famous people in the world as far as recognition across the globe. And so for this card to be so in demand is not surprising, right? This is more or less the only The Rock sports card that was ever issued. It's from a perforated tear-off set. I've put a comparison here just because I pulled this over the weekend. This is what's considered Serena Williams' rookie card by many. And this is from a Sports Illustrated for Kids episode. I've said episode twice. Issue's the word. Sports Illustrated for Kids issue in 1999. It's Series 4, card 814. I used to be subscribed to this, visited my family over the weekend, and my cousin pulled out his box of cards thinking, who are all these cool baseball players I have? Which of course were from the junk wax era and not particularly rare or valuable. But as I went through his box, I was very pleased to see that he had a ton of Sports Illustrated for Kids cards pulled out. So this gem was in there, as well as another player, let's say athlete, who stands at 5'7", 200 pounds, which if you think about it is a crazy ratio. Like that's like a wrestler or maybe like a Bartolo Colon. But this particular athlete is the most desired within the first release of the cards that came out with it featured. And it's our homeboy Charizard. So my cousin had this sitting in his box, and this just cracks me up because the two most valuable cards, of course, he thought it would be sports related or traditional sports related, but it was a Serena Williams Sports Illustrated for Kids card and a Charizard foil, shadowless, with shadow, sorry. That everybody who collected Pokemon would recognize, desire, and probably played with and beat up, so their copies aren't worth too much either. But point being, back to collectible. This Dwayne Johnson card, The Rock card, his rookie card, The Rock rookie, is valued today at $45K. Collectible takes an asset like this one and breaks it up into shares, in this case at $5 a share. So today on June 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern, you can download the collectible app. You can go in there if you don't have it already, and you can own a piece or as many pieces about as you can afford of this rookie card. So again, on what's dropping, I want to go through the calendar cardboard releases. I want to focus as well on some of the different digital apps that are out there, be it fractional, NFTs, and anything else that may evolve in the future. Because they are all ways for people to invest in, collect, absorb, love, share, all of the things that make us excited about sports cards or tabletop gaming cards or any other type of collectible that you can slab and elicits feelings of nostalgia and excitement. So that card's available on Collectible tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. On Rally, or Rally Road as it was more frequently known in the past, Rally Road offers collectibles for sale or for investment on a fractional basis, as well as things like cars and fine wine and handbags and watches, a bunch of other cool stuff that I don't know very much about myself, but I look and I say, well, that's shiny, or that looks really fancy, or my wife would love that. So not the stuff I want to own a small share of, but when it comes to the cards that they are releasing, they typically have a great selection of very well curated rare cards. And this is a perfect example of that. This is a 1999 UD Retro Incredible Michael Jordan auto. It is a PSA 9 grade, but if you're an MJ fan or you're a collector of these types of cards, I don't want to say the grade's irrelevant, but it's a hand-numbered of 23 on-card hard-signed autograph of Michael Jordan, which in and of itself is going to make it extremely desirable. So this card currently has a market cap of $50K, and that's what Rally's decided based upon previous sales, based upon comps that they can draw up in the marketplace. And if you want a piece of it, it has a low share price, a $5 per share price. In my memory, following these apps since they came out, $5 a share is about the lowest share price you're going to see. Sometimes it'll creep up to $25 a share depending on the asset. And this is something that doesn't necessarily reflect how successful or the potential for profit or the quality of the investment in that particular item. It's really just up to Rally and the owner, I believe, of the asset or whoever they bought it from, what amount they want to make available to people and at what price. Because the goal of these apps is to make super expensive cards affordable to the everyman and the everywoman and the every person. People who don't have $50K still would love to have a piece of these cards. And if you've got $5 and the Rally app, then on June 18th at 12 Eastern, you can own a piece of this very sweet MJ. So that's what's dropping. Let's move on to our next segment. It's the Toolshed. So on the Toolshed, which I must say is a shout out, an acknowledgement to two podcasts I've done in the past with my dear friend and co-host Alan Bush. Win the Web and Owning Your Own were the two shows. It was an internet marketing podcast. And on each episode, we would feature a tool that could help people learn, get better at what they want to do. And so when I started designing this show, I wanted to make sure that the Toolshed was a segment, because it's a fun way to talk about things that are inherently sports cards and tech related, which is what this channel is all about. So on today's episode, we're going to be homers. We're going to feature ourselves. I'm going to feature myself. I speak like there's a group of people here. Sports card tech is totally just me. This beautiful looking studio is totally just my second bedroom. But if I didn't tell you that, you would assume that I'm just a very well put together, high quality sports card professional, right? Perfect, thanks. So on today's tool show, the Sports Card Tech directory at sportscardtech.com/directory is the tool of the day. It is in its infancy, but my goal in building this is to have a central place where all people who love sports cards and technology, or have an interest in one or the other, or maybe are people who already understand a lot about the hobby but just really want to know more about what's out there and what are the differences between a lot of these tools and technology that's coming out. That is the point of the Sports Card Tech directory. So if you visit, you'll be able to leave reviews, you'll be able to discover new tools that you maybe didn't know about, you'll be able to sort and filter by things like collecting tools or investing tools, and be able to get my advice, my recommendations over time as I go through and review and demo and use these tools on my honest thoughts and feedback about what is worth it for what type of person you are. If you're a hardcore collector or investor, you're probably already paying for one of the market movers or card ladder type tools out there. If you're a more casual investor, you might be wondering, at what price point are these tools worth it to me? Or if you're perhaps just a true checklist collector, set collector, player collector, maybe you don't want to spend money at all and you just want to know that you have the most accurate checklist or the best way to perhaps like share and showcase your collection. All of those things are important, and all of those things are intended on being included in the Sports Card Tech directory. So right now there's maybe only 12 or 15 pieces of technology in there. This will be a growing part of the site. I'll be adding to it regularly, and for sure, everything that I feature on this show on the Toolshed segment will be added to the directory as well. So if you're ever curious in a sense of going back and, what is Sports Card Tech covered, what's out there, it will be at sportscardtech.com/directory. And again, this is just a handful of products that are in there today that are some of the market leaders. If you're an owner or founder or involved with a sports card technology company that you want included in the database, hit me up at contact@sportscardtech.com and I would love to add it, perhaps even interview you on the show so we can talk more about the tool. That is what this show is all about. I love sports cards and technology. Like, they're my two favorite interests in the entire world. And I knew over a year and a half ago when I really started planning this show, I knew it was going to be something that had to do with both of those things. And I was overthinking what I wanted to do, to be honest. Like, thinking that I maybe had to invent a new product or like some form of go head to head with some of these other major players out there that have a lot of funding or a bunch of employees on staff. And I realized that's not my niche. That's not my strongest suit. My strongest suit is talking about this stuff, being excited about it, and sharing it with other people who love sports cards so they can understand what tools and technology are right for them. And that is really the mission behind the Sports Card Tech directory. I have no interest in competing with any of these other tools out there. My goal is to be the place where people can understand which tools are for them and get honest feedback about whether something's valuable, whether it's worth it, or whether it's something they maybe want to wait on. So I'm interested and excited to keep everybody up to date on this stuff. Be sure to check out sportscardtech.com/directory as new updates and tools are added. So that was our first Toolshed episode. In the future, especially if I've got a very specific tool to feature, I'll probably jump into a screen share, maybe dive into examples of the way I use that tool and some things I do and do not like about them. But on this episode, we're just getting warmed up, and so I'm going to let everyone know the Toolshed is kicking off with what is effectively the Toolshed. Is where all the tools go, the Sports Card Tech directory. Let's go now to our main story. All right, on this episode's main story, we have a huge topic. And I say huge in the sense that what it is going to mean over time is huge. But what it means today is probably not something that impacts the average collector or investor in a way that they should worry about, probably more in a way that they should be excited about. And what I'm talking about is the announced acquisition, PSA buying Genamint. This was announced back on April 21st, 2021, so it's not brand new hot news, and my goal on this show is not to be the first to break stuff. There are a ton of great publications out there and people who do reporting and true journalism for this hobby, and they are great and wonderful, and I don't have any interest in trying to be the first to report something. What I do have interest in is diving deeper into things that I think are significant or meaningful, especially when they have to do with the overlap of sports cards and technology. And when we're talking about Genamint, Genamint is the definition of, in my opinion, sports card tech. So what Genamint is a technology, a company that's built technology that analyzes the quality of a card and in effect grades a card or pre-grades a card using solely computer technology. So we all knew this was coming. Anyone who's ever graded cards, anyone who's ever, like I have, scanned a card in depth, brought it into Photoshop, pulled out the ruler tool, assessed, in this case, is something accurately centered? Is it left to right or up to down correct? There are a lot of ways. There are physical, on Amazon, that you can buy centering tools that actually, you can lay out on a card. Honestly, those things are all cute and novel, Photoshop centering tools, because now that things like Genamint have existed or are in existence and fully being adopted and absorbed by PSA, the biggest grading company in the world, our homemade tactics and techniques to measure centering are going to go out the window. So before saying too much more about the product, let's take a look at a little demo video of it in action that was put together by Genamint. So don't ask me why they chose a Harry McCurdy card as the example. It's probably not one of the most well-known cards. Dave Parker, a little bit better known. So whether this is exactly what the interface looks like, or what my assumption is this is a demo of the technology that Genamint put together so they could pitch companies like PSA and BGS on a potential acquisition. But you can see as the card is scanned, there are grades assigned around the surface, the corners, the edges, the centering, and then an overall score is assigned. The eye appeal is also graded, which I'm assuming is a byproduct of the other factors. It's some sort of calculation algorithm that's interpreting other factors so it can assume eye appeal, because clearly eye appeal is not something a robot can assume, right? That's probably the most human definition among all of these, is what is the eye appeal? But then again, if you think about it, eye appeal is inherently a byproduct of other factors about a card, and in particular, its centering. You could have a PSA 3 grade of a card that's perfectly centered, and it's going to have better eye appeal. So the 3 buttons beneath the card, from my understanding, are actually assessing or scanning the card at different levels of depth or with different light, perhaps with UV, just like they do at the actual PSA, just like the humans do, especially for cards that may have any sign of being, forged, recreated. So kind of a funky demo, not particularly insightful around, how accurate is this? How reliable is this? In what way is PSA going to use this technology to replace or supplant humans in the grading process? One theory I have, and this is not something I've talked about with other people, maybe it's a widespread theory, but one theory I have is that eventually there will be a grade better than PSA 10. One example I have is I have two Mike Trout rookies. He's my favorite player. I'm an Angels fan. His Topps Update rookie I have 2 of. One is slightly centered better than the other. They're both PSA 10 grades. And when I look at the 2 next to each other, I often wonder to myself, like all 10s are not equal, right? Of course, all grades are not equal. And that brings us back to eye appeal to a degree. But ultimately, when it comes to centering, especially centering in edges and corners, things that a computer can accurately scan in, zoom in, and measure better than a human eye, I believe one of my PSA 10 Trouts is significantly better than the other. And in that same spirit, if I'm going to get rid of one, I know which one I'm getting rid of, because I believe the copy that I would keep to be the finest PSA 10 copy I've seen from what I can see on the surface when buying a card online primarily. So point being, I think PSA is going to first use Genamint in an attempt to replace some of the most easily automated features or facets of card grading, particularly centering. But knowing that the technology, as it's already been displayed in this demo, also includes elements of centering or of eye appeal, of edges, of corners, pretty much all of the foundational elements of grading, the same 4 that Beckett grades, subgrades around. For the most part, they're demonstrating that computers can do this. And the debate will probably become very, very much like that of VAR or video assistant umpires or conversations where we know as sports fans, sometimes reviewing a play means that the right outcome happens and that therefore the game is fairer, the fan experience is better. There is less looking back and blaming an outcome on a decision and more crediting or discrediting players for performance. In the case of grading cards, if a machine can do a better job of measuring centering than a human, why would we not embrace that, right? And at what point do humans or does human input take the lead or start to follow that of the machines? I don't have the answers, but I love thinking about this stuff and I find it exciting, and I think overall it's a very good thing for the hobby. The main reason this is a good thing is there's no way anytime soon, maybe there'll be a new grading company that's purely digital, that could absolutely happen. Maybe Genamint was trying to be that until they got PSA's interest. But there's no way PSA is going to just replace human graders with machine grading. Maybe in a couple years they release a cheaper level of grading that's totally, just computers only. Maybe it actually is a more expensive version. Maybe it's more accurate and therefore they charge more for it. We don't know what this means yet. All we know is that PSA now has this technology in their pocket, in their portfolio, and that they can leverage it and will figure out, as the largest grading company in the world with a backlog beyond belief, right? I have 1,500 cards sitting with PSA myself, so I feel your pain, everyone. Like, my cash flow is all out of whack because they haven't come back yet, right? And so this will ultimately be something that PSA uses in the grading process, but we don't know exactly how yet. So my advice is, if you're collecting cards of a player that you know you want to hold, do a little bit of extra diligence to make sure that that copy is the best 10 that you can find. Because I do believe ultimately that the more the computers come into the picture, that we may see grading scales change so that they can either, like a BGS 10 black label, say this is a premium 10 and this is a lesser 10, but they're both a 10. That's just my personal theory of the way that this is ultimately going to impact things. The other possibility is that one category of grading becomes completely automated. So perhaps it's centering or surface, such that that is how it's done, and humans don't provide analysis. We could speculate all day. If you have thoughts about what Genamint is going to do or how PSA is going to use the Genamint technology to change, improve, perhaps make worse its current backlog and its current processes, I'd love to hear it. Share it in the comments. Tell me why I'm wrong. I have very thick skin. A lot of what's going to happen on this show is me thinking out loud because that's how YouTube videos work. Let's be real. And if you disagree, I would love to know. If you agree, I would love to know. These are evolving conversations and we're all just spitballing. Unless you were at that table making the deal with PSA and Genamint, you're giving your best guess, and that's of course all I'm doing as well. So I'm excited about the technology that's going to be inevitably going to be used in the grading process, because I think it's going to either expand and broaden and add depth to the criteria and accuracy of grading. And if nothing else, it's going to allow graders and PSA to get through their backlog and deal with this immense demand that they have faster. And I'm pretty sure anybody who submits cards would be totally fine with getting their cards back faster if, for example, centering was the part that was not measured by a human. That would be like a very realistic first iteration of how this tech could be rolled out. And if the translation is, through testing, that this is actually more accurate than the job a human can do and faster, huge win. Huge win, and maybe that is all it becomes, is something that just makes the grading process a little bit faster and plays a background role and never really takes, a seat at the table grading-wise. We'll see. It's something exciting to think about, and maybe it's not. Maybe you're scared to death of this. Maybe you don't like the feeling that the robots are coming. Maybe you'd rather wait 2 years to get your cards back if they are just graded by humans. I completely understand that, and for the most part feel the same way. I need to know exactly how this technology is going to be used. And all of us do as collectors and people who appreciate and trust an impartial opinion. Is a computer impartial? Yeah, but is it better at grading than a human? We will have to see. Let's close things out now with our final segment. It's one thing to know. So on one thing to know, I'm going to give you one thing to know. On this episode, One thing you might not know, people might not know, is PSA is still accepting certain kinds of submissions. Of course, they've totally shut down all of the affordable submissions. You can pay $300 or more, I believe, to get a Super Express level card graded, which can be up to $5,000 in declared value. So if a card's worth that, if it's worth $300 to get graded and you want to sell it for $4 or $5, I suppose PSA is still in business for you. But for everybody else, there's probably nothing meaningful they're offering right now, except the ability to reholder cards. And reholdering is literally just putting a new slab on an existing card that's already slab. Why would you do that? Perhaps you totally cracked and destroyed a slab on a card like this one. It happened in the mail, but it's my fault for probably not packing it better. If you want a new slab on a card that has an old or outdated label from PSA that's maybe from the days before that lighthouse symbol or before they added new technology and tracking into the labels themselves, that might be a good reason to get it reholdered. So if you're antsy to be productive with your collection and you're just like eager to get things done, reholder cards that are cracked, out of date, or maybe just scratched and aesthetically displeasing, because for sure market value will be increased when you have a better looking card and a better looking slab. Maybe not by much. Of course, you always want to buy the card and not the slab, but we all know that shiny and beautiful always helps sell. Aesthetics help sell things, and whether it's 5 cents or $5 or $50 or $500, more market value for your sale, if that's your intent, is great. If you're a collector, I don't want, in my personal collection of Van Exel, I don't want any cracked slabs. I don't want any smudged or smeared or imperfect slabs at all. And while I wait to try to get sleeves for each of the slabs that are getting harder and harder to find, just like penny sleeves, I'm very careful with moving those cards around because they do scratch easily. It's probably the worst thing about PSA, BGS, SGC, all the major company slabs. So this is just a service that is available. I'm making somewhat of a PSA, public service announcement, that PSA is still accepting cards for reholder. You can get new slabs put on cards that you already own for just $10 a card. And while you're waiting for the 1,000, for me, I just counted 1,458 cards sitting with PSA right now. That's a lot of cash flow I'm missing, and I know I'm not the only one in this position. So it's hard. It's hard to keep the flips, the traditional things that a lot of us were into, especially those that have been into the hobby for a long time. It's hard to keep those elements of our business and our hustle going when we don't have cards coming back in. So one thing I'm just advocating as somewhat of a time kill and a way to just improve or level up your collection in a way that PSA still can help you out right now is with reholdering cards. So that is my suggestion. Thank you very much if you've made it to this point. I am extremely grateful if you're still listening to me talk and you've made it through to this point where I get to tell you to subscribe and listen out for new episodes. This is what I love to do. If I could do this as a true job, I would be ecstatic. And my goal is not to necessarily make that happen. My goal is to continue doing the things that I love, like talking about sports cards and technology, but make this show work for the people that love to watch it. So if there are ideas for segments, if there's things you want to see me cover, if there are things you don't like, I have thick skin. Tell me. All of us are just in this hobby together. We make it fun by working together and enjoying each other. I'm not here to have a bad time. I'm here to talk about things that maybe are sometimes unpleasant, but overall, I want to have a good time on this show, and that means listening to what people want to hear, want to see, and want to hear me blabber on about. I've got a ton of thoughts. I have a lot of experience in the worlds of startups, technology, evolving and growing products, and in sports cards. I've never left the hobby. I've been there since it began in my life at 7 or 8 years old, and I've stayed in it since. And so I've got a lot of perspective that I love to share, and it's something that's just important to me. I don't think this hobby is going anywhere. Regardless of the potential decline, we are seeing a healthy sports card market that I believe honestly is primarily being affected by the backlog of the grading companies right now. As I mentioned, my cash flow not in the ideal spot because of that, which makes it hard to buy new cards, which makes it hard to get excited about new flips or let alone buying wax at the prices they are at today. So I know a lot of people are in that same boat. Hopefully you empathize, maybe you sympathize, maybe you don't care at all, but you just found this fun to listen to. Those are all great things. I appreciate all of those things. So thank you for listening. Please be sure to give me feedback. Subscribe on all the social channels. I'm Andrew Germer. This was Sports Card Tech.